Sexy, mysterious, and lethal. The term drop-dead gorgeous takes on a different meaning when it comes to these lovely ladies.
Thank God you showed up.
Their motivations might be different, but one thing they have in common is that they are much more than meet the eye.
Remember me?
They keep us guessing, yearning, wanting, and then when you least expect it, they can literally take your breath away.
Senya, I can't breathe.
These are the femme fatales of the silver screens. In this episode, we will attempt to unveil some of these beautiful women. Beatrix Kiddo in Kill Bill, Katherine Tramell in Basic Instinct, and Amy Dunne in Gone Girl. And perhaps we might just find out who is the ugliest among them.
Terrible.
I'm Darren.
And I'm Tim.
And welcome back to Movie Beings.
Beans?
Great introduction as always, Darren.
Oh, thank you very much, Tim. And I noticed that, now we have something different on our heads.
Did we? I can hear something different.
You don't enjoy wearing the headphones?
Not at all.
You don't like to hear yourself talk?
No, it feels weird.
It feels weird, but don't you normally wear headphones when you play video games?
Yeah, but usually you don't get the feedback like this.
Oh, I'm sorry. But I think I would try out like wearing headphones for this episode just so that I can, I guess, hear you better. I have really bad hearing.
Well, there you go. We'll see how we go, right?
So what do you think about the topic that we picked for today?
I think it was a good one because I feel like it's all over the place with femme fatale movies because like so many, it's so hard to pick it, right? Because like, what's the definition? It's just like a deadly woman, and the movies we've chosen, they're very different in all, aspects of the ways how they go about their aspects of life and how they interact with people. So it's always weird when you're just like, oh, just like a killer. And then you think of like Beatrix Kiddo, who's just a killer.
Literally, yeah. The term of the movie is Kill Bill.
Yeah, exactly.
She goes around, she kills people.
But it's a completely different meaning for the other two women in the other movies.
Interesting.
So I thought it was an interesting topic to choose, to be honest.
Okay, that's great. And I guess before we jump into the movies, we need to set up like the basic understanding of the term. What do you understand of the term femme fatale?
Like I was saying before, like a deadly woman.
Yeah,
deadly women.
woman.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So I guess it takes on a different meaning when it comes to different movies, right? But I think this term dates way back before, like in history, all the way back to Cleopatra.
Ah, yeah.
So she was basically the first femme fatale because she has all the power and she controls a lot of different people. But this archetype also appears in the Bible, or one of the stories in the Bible. Have you heard of this story? Like a woman's name Salome. So one of the stories is that she really despised John the Baptist, and her uncle is a king. So she did this seductive dance and she hypnotized him and she asked her uncle to deliver John the Baptist's head on a silver platter.
I want the head of John the Baptist.
So this was one of the stories in the Bible, or was used in a lot of the movies about the Bible, because John the Baptist is one of the disciples in the Bible, right?
Yeah.
Throughout the 19th and 20th century, this kind of archetype become more and more popular, especially in the 40s and 50s when they appear in a lot of the detective noir movies. Why do you think this archetype was so popular at the time?
Well, especially after World War II and stuff, like always about having, well, even going into the Cold War and stuff, all about more spy like craft, and especially like having the female in that role. It's just like they think of it more of like the seductress and the manipulator. So it's like an easy thing to be like, oh, they might enjoy watching that more than a man doing that thing, even though you got people like James Bond, who was like...
literally the lady killer.
Yeah. I do believe that's probably one of the main reasons that began, but, And why
do you think that during the 80s and 90s, like there were 15 femme fatale movies released?
Doesn't seem like a lot, to be honest.
Yeah, but I think those movies, they were very popular in their own ways. Do you enjoy these types of movies?
I do. I would say we don't get them much anymore, really. But I do think I did enjoy like the aspect in all of the movies we watched. I know these are some of the better ones, but it's just like it can easily, like, there was points in Basic Instinct where I'm like, oh, this is a bit played up a bit compared to like a bit more in depth, like in Gone Girl, where it's a lot more like the whole movie manipulates you to her like viewpoint. Where in Basic Instinct, you're kind of following along with it and like, oh, what's going on here, and trying to figure it out. But that's what I mean. Like I enjoy those kind of movies, but I just think it's not much of a focus now. I know the landscape for movies is a bit weird at the moment. So I think they're all trying to find what sticks, you know? And because I can't even remember if there's been one in movies recently. Like, I guess Furiosa, but I wouldn't even know if that would be like a good reference, but more of just like a straight up action movie, and she's like an action hero, right? More than her being like a femme fatale. But I'd have to look into it more, because it's probably not a genre I look out for, but I do enjoy it. I don't think it's like a bad genre.
Yeah, and I think that genre is very controversial in their own way as well, because you don't, like, when you watch a movie and you see a female lead, most of the time they will try they are portrayed as damsel in distress, you know, just to make the main character look better, right? Usually.
I literally watch Indiana Jones and the Lost Temple, and she's like the pinnacle of like, I'm just a pretty woman there to scream and ask for help.
Hey, I'm right here.
They don't need to be that completely useless. Like, they're capable.
Yes. And the thing here is, like, during the 40s and 50s, I noticed that when female actors or actresses appear on the screen, they either fit into one of those two boxes. You are either a pretty woman who are there to be saved, or you are a witch, or a manipulative, insane woman who tries to kill everyone. Yeah. And I don't think that's fair, you know. And I'm very glad to see that there are more options for the female actors. In saying that, I really enjoy watching the Femme Fatale movies, because it's very intriguing, you know, and it's usually woven into a lot of detective stories. So you follow the stories, and, you know,
everyone likes a bit of mystery,
and it doesn't hurt to look at pretty woman on the screen either. So I guess we can jump into the movies. Which movie do you want to start up?
Well, let's start with Basic Instinct, because it's probably the one that most people refer to.
Yes. And
it was we're even thinking about this movie because everyone knows it for the one scene, right?
Yes.
And it's just like, even that scene, I feel like it's a bit, like, it feels a bit weird. It feels like a man wrote it, right? It's just like, here's 6 men staring at a woman as she like opens her legs without any panties on, and they all stare at her. And I'm like, oh God. Yes. It's a bit of, you know, fanatical. But I do think this movie, I thought it was fine. And I definitely think Katherine, she's like the best part of the whole movie.
He gave me a lot of pleasure.
Yes.
If Sharon Tate?
Sharon Stone.
Sharon Stone, sorry. Yeah. She's probably the best part of the whole movie, right? Yeah. Like, if she didn't do a really good job acting in this movie would have fell pretty flat.
Yes.
Because I feel like a lot of the other actors in this are pretty bad.
Yeah, I mean, like, the movie definitely shows the ages of the time, you know, like the acting are
it's
a bit stiff.
Early 90s as well, which I thought, I'm like, oh, it feels more dated than that, which is weird.
But Michael Douglas' acting was pretty good, though.
I didn't like him.
Oh, you didn't like him at all?
I didn't like him in this.
Yeah.
I don't know what you're talking about.
At first, when he was cast for the role, like, he wanted to cast a different actress to play Katherine. So because he was a pretty big star at the time, so he has a lot of control, and he was pressuring the filmmakers to cast another actress. Sharon Stone was like very new to the screen at the time, so. But probably because of that, she was more fearless, and she wanted to portray the character really well.
And even prove herself a bit, right?
Yes, correct. Yes, I agree. Her character is definitely the anchor for the movie. Without her character, this movie would not be as good as it is. Funny that you mentioned the interrogation scene. So later, after the movie was out, she revealed in one of the interviews that she was not aware of the fact that scene would be shot that way.
Okay.
So the director told her that, you know, he would shoot the scene differently from a different angle, so it wouldn't reveal anything.
They wouldn't see that part or whatever?
Yes, but later he didn't tell her that he would shoot it that way. And then she later found out, of course, and, you know, it became this huge argument. But now she kind of forgave him, and she's like, oh, I understand why he did that, because the character needs that.
I think it's a part of her character, but it is played on a bit, I feel. Like, I do think that's what I thought. That was the only thing I had a criticism with this part, is that they really do show her sexuality off a lot already.
Yep.
That this scene, it's not as important. I think it feels more iconic than it needed to be.
Yeah.
Because it's just a point of where she like kind of controls the whole room with one action, essentially, right? That's like what she's trying to pull off. But I feel like she already does a pretty good job through the whole movie already without that. Because that would be one thing I'd say, like, there's a lot of sexual actions with her, and I'm like, like, I get it, but also, like, probably felt it was a bit too much at some points, because I do feel like they portray it quite well early on and through the movie, but I feel like there's like, oh, we need an extra sex scene here. Oh, here's another extra sex scene. I'm like, oh my God.
I don't make any rules. I go with the flow.
And I think during this movie, I picked out a few different scenes where she would not portrayed sexually, but she still had a lot of control of the situation.
Yeah.
So, of course, outside of the interrogation room, there were a few different scenes. The first one was when Michael Douglas' character met her for the first time, where she was at the beach house.
Yeah.
So the two policemen came over and they questioned her straight away.
Yeah.
But she was in complete control. She knew all the answers prior to the questions. And at the end of that interaction, she was just like, F off, boys.
Yeah, get out of here.
Yeah, get off my properties. And then she's like, oh, like, you don't have to be that rude. And then she was like, get off my property, please. So she was very calm, very in control the whole time. And she didn't even need to show any of her sexuality.
No, and it was just a control through her like power of the situation.
Yes.
Because even at this point, this is the first time I watched the movie. So early on, I'm like, oh, this feels a bit odd for it to like lean off with her like killing someone straight off the bat. Because I'm like, oh, that's pretty bold, really. Because that's like the whole thing. You're guessing like if she did it or not through the whole movie. And I was like, when you watch it the first time, wow, this is probably not her, right?
Yes,
it's like the first person you see. And I'm like, oh. And obviously later on down in the movie, you figure out what actually going on. But yeah, that's a great scene where she kind of like controls it still, and they just feel like, oh, we didn't really, even though I think Michael Douglas was like, oh, she did it. He's really confident, which I'm really surprised that he kind of, we can talk about it later, but she like really like convinces him that she didn't do it and completely convinces him, which I'm like, oh my God, this guy really got whipped.
Let's get the fuck out of here.
And prior to this movie, Sharon Stone starred alongside Arnold Schwarzenegger in Total Recall.
Oh, yeah. So
it was one of the reasons why she was cast to play Katherine Tramell, because in Total Recall, she played a double agent. So one of the aspects in that movie was she could switch from being loving to a total psychopath.
Yeah.
After all, we're married.
And the director was like, yes, I like that. And then you're going to play a full-on psychopath in this movie.
But I think it's more subtle in this because you rarely see it, which I think is good for this movie, because it's like the part of it is like you don't know if she did it, right? That's like the whole point, because you're following with the detective and he's trying to figure out what actually happened. And at the start, he's like, this is what my instinct is and I believe it. And then she slowly like lures him and convinces him. And then like he changes his mind, which is insane, which I couldn't believe. I'm like, what? He really thinks, because at this point there's another woman who he thinks did it and is convinced that it's her. And even I'm like, oh my God, he's just, at this point I'm like, oh shit, she actually did all this shit.
Yes. And I think under the context of a detective story, the character of Femme Fatale works really well because it keeps you guessing.
Yeah, exactly.
Right?
Through the whole movie, you don't know. It's like, oh, maybe she didn't do it. Oh, maybe she did.
Yeah.
Oh, actually, maybe this person did it. Oh, maybe this. Because I think my favorite scenes in this movie are when someone tells the detective like a different viewpoint of what actually happened. So there's the first scene where they have sex after they go to the club.
Yeah.
And her girlfriend comes and he's like, why are you here? You angry? He's like, she likes me to watch. And he's like, oh. And then later on, Katherine tells him, she's like, oh, she likes to watch. I'll let her watch. Where clearly she doesn't like watching. This is her controlling her. And then there's like another scene where he goes to his, I guess, kind of like on and off girlfriend or friends with benefits.
The psychiatrist.
The other psychiatrist. And he asks her about it. And she's like, oh, she used to stalk me in high school and used to copy me and stuff, where Katherine said, no, she was the one copying me and she was the one copying all the things I was doing, manipulating the view of that as well. And he believes her. And then later on, like he finds, I think, one photo that shows that she had blonde hair before she did. And he's like, all right, I'm convinced.
Yeah.
When it's like, no, there's been a lot of things that people have talked out against her. And even he's seen things that like corroborate that she's not telling the truth. But he's so kind of whipped up in her kind of image and everything about her that he's completely fooled by the end of the movie, which I couldn't believe. I was like, oh my God.
Why couldn't you believe it? Like, I think the relationship was really quite convincing. And right at the start, of course, Michael Douglas, detective's character, didn't believe Katherine at all.
Not at all.
But slowly, like, she would convince him, and by giving him like a little bit of breadcrumbs here and there, some truth here and there.
Opening up to him, pretending to opening up to him and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Because I'm more talking about that like final scene when Gus, his mate, he's going to check the apartment.
Yes.
And then he ends up getting stabbed by the killer.
Yeah.
And then he goes and he's like, oh shit. He figures it out. It's like, oh no, it's her. And he runs up there and he's dead. And then the other psychiatrist is there and she's like, I think she had like a hand in her pocket or something. I don't know why she left it there. It was so stupid. I'm like, he's like got the gun. It's like, I'm bloody gonna shoot you. You bloody killed her. He's like, no. And she's like, had a hand in her pocket and she like shoots her. And I'm like, oh my God, this guy's an idiot. And then he like looks in her hand. It's just like her keys or whatever.
Yeah.
And I'm like, bro.
How come you are a detective?
Yeah, well, he wasn't at this point. He was like, what was it? He was like on leave because of...
He was suspended.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I'm like...
I still can't believe that during that era, the guy... allegedly murdered 2 people prior to his assignment, and then all he got was like, "Oh, you have to go to the psychiatrist."
Yeah,
for like once a week or something.
Bro, that's policeman for you. Apparently, they murder people. Oh, that's all right. Come back to work.
Yeah. One of my favorite scenes in the movie is when they came back to Katherine's house and they got her back for the interrogation. Mm-hmm. So she was in the car and she offered
him
Nick a cigarette, and he said, "No, I don't smoke."
Oh, I found some in my pocket. Would you like one?
I told you I quit.
And then, and you also said that you didn't kill those people, right?
Yeah.
So
she's already like getting into his head.
Yes, slowly. But even when she was in the car all by herself with the 2 policemen, she was in total control and she knew what she was doing. So she did her research. She knew all about Nick's character and the history and things like that. So during that time, what I like about the scene is she was wearing white, but she was playing devil's advocate. It's like she was seducing him to do all the wrong things.
Yeah,
Get a cigarette first. Do you want to drink? Oh, I don't drink anymore. No,
Because that was one of my other favorite scenes when she comes over, she goes over there, he goes over there for a drink, and she's got the ice pick and literally like wailing on some ice. And I'm like, oh my God. It's like she's literally like doing this action in front of him. And it's crazy because she does it later on as well, where she goes over to his place to have a drink, and he's got the ice again. She's like, I'll do it. I'm pretty good at this, right? Like playing it off, and it's like, this is insane.
Yes, and I think that's what the movie does really well. Like it keeps you guessing, like if she has done it or not. Yes, the scene where Nick came over to her house for a drink and she was breaking the ice up. It was also during that scene that she revealed that Nick's wife killed herself because of his work and things like that. And I think it was a pivotal point of his character. He was like, no one should know this. The only person that knows this is my psychiatrist. And how come Katherine knows this?
Because that's when he kind of breaks a bit, right?
Yes, correct.
Because he's just like, who's leaking my information? He kind of goes insane.
Yes.
I feel like he goes insane a lot in this movie.
Yes.
He does some real bad shit. I'm like, you're right. He shouldn't have been a policeman. After he shot those guys, he should have been not in there anymore.
Yeah. Well, it's Michael Douglas. He has to be in every scene.
Yeah, apparently.
Another scene that I want to discuss. Well, before I get to that scene, I personally think that this movie kind of became less interesting after Nick and Katherine got together. I think the first half of the movie, when Katherine was trying to seduce Nick, is way more interesting because we can see the struggle inside Nick's head. Like he has this moral, he has this code of the policeman. Like I have to do the right thing, I have to find the truth, and I have to make sure that this woman is convicted for her crime. So, and Katherine was just like weaving her way through that very masterfully with all the lies and the stories. So I think the first half of the movie was great. But after they got together, I was like, I'm pretty sure now she did it. So, but the scene where after the interrogation and Nick offered to take her home. So he was driving the car in the rain, and the conversation that they had was just like it's supposed to be very casual. But Katherine was like, they talked about the fact that he shot 2 tourists when he was on assignment in the car. So he's like, how come you know all this stuff? And then I know all about you. And then, she left and she ran to the house, and Nick was just looking after her. She's like, and during that time I was like, he was hooked. Because personally he likes the dangerous lifestyle. He doesn't want to play it safe. So, and she knows that about him. So
I will say one more scene before we maybe move on.
Yeah.
I really didn't like how the movie ended, because I think it plays like she's manipulated the whole situation perfect, and she's like in bed with him, and he's like talking about their future, and he's like, let's like run away together, let's have kids and stuff, and she's like, I really don't want kids, and he's like, that's fine. And then she's like, you see her hand, I'm like, was she really going to kill him? And then they like shows that she was, and I'm like, wouldn't that have messed up her whole plan?
What do you mean?
Because she set up the whole situation for the other therapist, right, to be the killer. She left all the information in her hotel and stuff. I feel like it would have been really sloppy then to kill him. Because then who killed him with an ice pick? When we've literally just got the killer, it really would just get her arrested, I would feel.
Yeah.
Because it's like, I don't know who else would have known that he's close with her now, because I know Gus did until, he got stabbed.
Yes.
But I feel like it would make sense to be like, people would figure out, like, what's going on here? Because I felt like it was weird as well, because even when she's writing the book about him, she says, the girl always dies, right? So I feel like him killing the therapist was kind of like a good ending for that. And whether they got together or not, I feel like her leaving him at the end there would have made more sense. But her trying to kill him at the end felt a bit weird for her character. When she manipulated the whole situation perfectly and got out of it. And it's like, maybe I'll just kill him now.
But I guess it's more of an internal conflict. She was like, because she's attracted to dangerous men or killers, as she's put it.
Yeah.
And right now she had a choice, like, do I want to stick to the future that he drew out? Like we are going to stay together, we're going to have a bunch of kids, or we're going to have a happy ending.
Yeah.
But in her mind, she doesn't really want that. And I think it was just like it's like a symbolic image of her making a choice. Do I want to go back to the route of dating the killers, or do I want to stay with a guy who is not a killer?
Well, he is a killer as well.
He is, yes. But I think so. I think the ending was a bit more ambiguous. I think it was just to show us that she was the killer the whole time, and now we're supposed to feel bad for her. And now she has her happy ending. Great. So
I didn't feel great about anyone in this movie.
Probably, maybe except Gus.
Yeah, that's what I felt bad when he got killed. I'm like, bloody poor Gus.
Yes.
She's just cracking wires the whole time.
And he's been a great friend to Nick, even though Nick has been like a bit of an
asshole to him. Yeah. Well, anyway, that's Katherine for you.
That's Katherine Tramell. And surprisingly, well, not surprisingly, this movie spawned a sequel.
Oh, God.
Which was not good at all.
I could imagine, because I felt like this movie kind of just did enough. That's why I'm like, it wasn't strong enough to be like, we can like copycat this.
Yeah. But of course, they want to maximize on Sharon Stone's sexuality before she turns older, apparently. But the sequel came out in 2006. So a while after. So maybe they were like, we're kind of running out of ideas.
Well, it's probably like, let's see if we can still, capitalize on this. It was probably way too late.
That sequel flopped really hard at the box office. Okay. Do you want to move on to the next movie, or do you want to?
Let's go into Kill Bill.
I must say, Kill Bill is one of my favorites out of the 3 movies here, because in my understanding, Beatrix Kiddo is the literal term for femme fatale.
Well, if you take it literally, yes. She is literally killing people.
She's a deadly woman, and she knows martial arts. She knows how to use the katana. Apparently she can fly in some scenes. Might as well, right? Technically, we are talking about 2 movies, because there's volume 1 and there's volume 2. Do you have a favorite scenes in this movie?
Favorite scene? Oh my God, I feel like there's so many good scenes in this movie. I guess even the end, like literally the end. Again, I don't know why I always say like I like the end of the movies when she finally gets to Bill.
Yes.
And they have kind of like a moment.
Yes.
And then she like has this it shows you in 2 that she has like this training montage with like the was he a Chinese? Yeah, is he Chinese like master or whatever?
Yeah.
And she was the only one he taught the like deadly technique to, and she uses it on Bill like the final time for it. And I'm like, oh, it's like a touching moment. And then like her meeting a kid again and stuff, and it was like, I thought, oh, maybe like, you know, it's like almost like, will this be the one she doesn't like kill? Maybe this will be a nice life. But she's like, after killing I don't know how many people before Bill, but like there's a pile of bodies, and she's like, I'm not done yet. One more to the pile.
You overreacted?
And the interaction that they had prior to the final fight, you know, the Bill put her into the truth serum, gave her the truth serum, and he was telling the story about Superman.
Move. Yeah. That's like an asshole move as well, right?
I mean, it's Bill. You know, what do you expect? He's a
I was gonna
mob
say.
gangster.
Yeah.
But I agree. I think it was one of my favorite scenes as well because it has a really big twist. Like the whole time she believed that her kid was
Gone.
dead.
Yeah.
And now, you know, she's alive. But to be fair, I think the final fight was a bit underwhelming because comparing to all the other fights.
I think it was meant to, because like every fight before that, like even in 1 when she's like in the Japanese restaurant and slaughtering how many people there, I'm like, oh my God. Like it was like such a massacre. And I'm like, even before that, like even her killing all the other people, like I'm trying to even think. Like even the first scene in the movie when she's killing, I can't remember her name.
She ran.
The first guy, the first woman in in her house, and she goes to her house, and then like they beat the shit out of her.
Yeah.
Like even the small scene like that, it was like really over the top and really like when the kid comes home and then they're like hiding their weapons and stuff. It's all really dramatic, and where it's like this final scene is like the final kill is just like, and I think it's even her like showing that she's surpassed him as well. Like using this ability that he never learned as well. So it's like, I like it from that aspect. I can see what you mean that it might be a bit anticlimactic, but I felt like it was a good ending that's like, oh, she gets to be a mother. She's like, gets that and like gets her revenge as well. I think it was like a good ending for that.
Yeah. And I guess, you know, this is how Quentin Tarantino plays with the expectation of the audience because like he built it up so much. Like Bill is this kind of super martial artist. Like he could go toe to toe with the master in the beginning when he asked the master to take on Beatrix, you know, like when he came down the stairs and he's got like bruises all over his face and he was like, it was just a friendly contest.
Yeah.
And yeah, so I agree. I expected more out of the final fight, especially when they had this long conversation before the ending. And then finally they got like 5 strikes out of each other with they using their katanas with no guns. And then she ended the fight like literally 5 minutes in. And I was like, yeah, I kind of wish that the fight would have gone a bit longer comparing to all the other fights. Like the first one, when she fought the Japanese assassin, another femme fatale, in the snow. And I think that fight was fine. They had a few blows here and there.
It was very cinematic into the theme. But no, I still love that ending because I just feel like it's such a poignant thing to be like, we're done here. Like, I'm not messing around. I'm here to kill you.
Yeah.
You're done.
I guess so. I think I just wish that Bill was a bit more powerful so that Beatrix can kind of overcome that a bit more. I
just feel like how long did this need? This was 2 movies already, which were both fairly long. Like how much more longer could have gone for Darren? Another hour of them fighting and destroying the house?
I wouldn't mind that. But I guess like when the movies were released in the 90s, in the DVDs, they usually contain all the extra scenes, all the deleted scenes, right? And funny enough, Quentin Tarantino did speak about Volume 3.
Oh, he thought about it. So, well, it could have been, but I still think it works fairly well.
But now, you know, like he decided not to make Volume 3 anymore. People were saying like how are you going to develop the story from Volume 3?
What are you doing?
He's going to focus on the daughter. Now the daughter is growing up.
Someone else going to come after her.
You remember the first scene, the daughters of one of the assassins was there, and she said, "Oh, if you're feeling raw about it, I'm always ready." Yeah. So that's what Volume 3 is going to be.
I feel like 2's a good ending though.
I think so.
I don't think it needed more.
Yeah.
Anyway, back on the Beatrix a bit.
Yeah.
So she is literally like the killer. Like we've seen through the whole movie. I don't know if there's many people apart from Bill that she's still like a deadly fight, but like I feel like then that massacre, like the restaurant in Japan's like maybe the pinnacle that everyone probably thinks about because that whole scene is insane.
Yeah, and did you notice her outfit?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Can't everyone notice the tracksuit?
Yes.
Like with the red blood contrast to the yellow. It's amazing.
And that tracksuit was inspired by Bruce Lee.
Ah, yeah, that would make sense,
yeah,
right?
Yeah.
Because I'm like, these films are kind of like that influence, right? Of that like kind of kung fu, like you're saying earlier, that she flies. It's just like that kind of like cheesiness to it, which was kind of cool. A bit of a homage to that kind of, those kind of movies, which is also cool.
Yeah.
But it's always harder with her because she wasn't really manipulating. We were talking about this before because she is straight after the first volume, she literally has the woman in the boot of the car and she's like, I'm leaving you alive so you can tell Bill I'm bloody coming to kill you. Like,
yeah.
She's not like trying to manipulate the situation.
Yes.
She's not trying to like overthink anything. She's like, I've got my new sword. I'm coming to kill you. And everyone in the way.
And I think it's a very good play on the term as well, because usually when you think of the term femme fatale, you think of a woman who uses her sexuality and manipulates different situations. But for Beatrix, she's the literal meaning of the thing. She's like, I'm deadly, get out of my way. And I think it's very hard for me to find the scenes where she demonstrates the typical and the classical traits of a femme fatale on the silver screen. I can think of maybe one or two, but it's not that very apparent.
Yeah.
Like the first scene that I kind of think of is at the beginning of volume 2 when she was in a wedding chapel and Bill came over and he was like, I'm just playing my flute. I'm here to join your wedding. You remember when Bill sat on her side and she was going to come up to the altar to do the test run with her new groom. And she turned around, she came to him and she kissed him twice. The first kiss was like, just be nice. Just let me have this. And then she kissed him the second time. And during that scene, I was thinking, maybe at first I was like, maybe now she's begging for her life. But she knew that it was impossible to beg. So she kind of used a different tactic, maybe like using her relationship, the love that he had for her, to kind of give her the freedom.
Yeah.
What do you think about that scene?
I kind of agree in the sense that it was like not a manipulation, but her like, just please, like, let it be. Like, I've got this kid now. I found a man, whether or not he's good enough, but I just want to try to have a normal life. And Bill's like, he doesn't want any of that. He like kind of plays on it a little. It does seem earnest, that like whole scene. Because it's like, in the start of the movie, you already know what happens. Yeah. So it's just like, it does seem like an earnest conversation. It doesn't seem like you know what's happening. But like you said, as soon as he like sits down, like it pans out and then you can see all of the like killers outside waiting to come in and you're like, oh, okay. Yeah. Whatever she said, it didn't mean nothing to him.
Yeah.
He's already hurt and he's ready to take his vengeance.
Yes. And another interesting thing about that scene, I just realized now, like the whole assassin group contains of 3 deadly women.
Well, there you go.
Yeah, right? So, I didn't realize that before.
And the other one's his brother.
Yeah. I didn't learn that until like the volume 2, of course. But Ren Oshi, Black Mamba, and the Cottonmouth, they are all named after the venomous snakes. But the lady with the one eye turns out to be one of the deadliest. Yeah, it's interesting, that scene. The second scene that I kind of think it demonstrates the femme fatale traits that we spoke about in the previous movie is when she met up with Esteban Vallejo. So he runs a brothel and she was going to question him to get him to point her to the direction of Bill. And at the beginning, she was like, you're
being
such
a friendly,
yeah. She was being very friendly and she kind of flirted with him a little bit as well.
May I join you?
Only on the condition that you call me Esteban.
But he was being very
wistful.
easy.
He's being wistful. He's not really paying attention.
Yeah.
He's kind of rambling.
Yes.
And not really like taking anything she says
seriously
at all. Yeah.
And he gave her no context. I'm going to draw you a map. I will tell you where to find him. And she's like, why are you helping me? And he's like, just because I think that he would like to see you as well. It's like, okay.
Yeah, so it's
that
not
was
really
very easy.
It's just kind of like a scene. Like it could have even. It's just like a thing. It's like, how does she find Bill? Here's like the scene for that. Because I do think it's like an interesting like look at it. Because he's like, Bill's like a son to me, right, or something. like a brother, and it's like, okay, this guy's a creep as well. I kind of wish she killed him.
Yeah, but I guess she has no reason to kill him.
Well, that's
right?
the thing. He isn't on the list or in a restaurant attacking her.
Yes. But during that small interaction, he kind of gave her some ideas that he's a bad person as well. But I think she was very focused on her mission. She doesn't want to go like any sideways.
Yeah, that's what I mean. She's definitely not doing anything else apart from what she wants to do, which was to find and kill Bill.
Yeah. Did you notice that one of his girls got scratched in the face?
Yeah, the cut. Well, he was mentioning, he was like talking about it, and then he got the girl to come over to show the like how he punishes them. Yeah. So it's all, well, he already didn't seem like a good dude before you see any of that stuff. So it's like, ugh.
And I think the last scene that I want to discuss is before she found out that she was pregnant inside the hotel. So Karen Kim was the other assassin that was sent to kill her. She found out she was pregnant, and she kind of tried to talk her way out of the situation.
Yeah.
And she got a congratulations from the other assassin, which I think was
interesting. It's good in the way that they're in the same line of work, but she she understands that it's like there was a bit of mercy, which is funny because like Kill Bill or Beatrix Kiddo, she didn't give any mercy to like anyone she's trying to kill, which is weird as well because you think she might have. Well, that's why at the end when she's talking to Bill, I'm like, oh, maybe she'll try to make like a life with him and the kid, but she was like too hell bent. Where like the assassin came to kill her, and she's like, oh, I'm pregnant. Maybe you can let me leave, even though that didn't really work out in the end for her anyway.
Yeah,
but no, like so many crazy scenes in this movie. Yeah. There's so many different things you can look at, but definitely a deadly woman.
Yes, 100%. I really like the training montages as well, but I guess we don't need to talk about that because it doesn't really fit into the theme of the movie. And I guess we can move on to the last movie.
Yes, Gone Girl.
Miss Amy Dunne. Rosamund Pike is phenomenal in this role.
Yeah.
What do you think about, well, before we talk about her, what do you think about Ben Affleck's character?
I think he does do a good job of it. And it's just like, it is like the classic story of two people getting together, you know, and then it just kind of fizzles out, right? But there's so much more going on. That's kind of the thing, because you get from his angle of like, he's not really invested in it anymore. He's kind of like he's literally moved on from the relationship. And then her like manipulation of the whole situation, which is insane. But I do think he does do a good job. Yeah. And I think that Ben Affleck does really well in these types of roles. He doesn't need to be Batman to be relevant. No. But I think coming from a background of a writer himself, I would think that he has the ability to pick better movies like Gone Girl, because he was in some of the bad movies with Jennifer Lopez and things like that. Well, that's because they were probably together, but apparently they're getting divorced. So
again,
that's what I thought was funny. I watched this movie, then I saw in the news like they're probably getting a divorce. I'm like, oh god.
But we're not talking about him today.
No, we're not.
So let's start with Amy Dunne. I think at the beginning she was portrayed to be a very intelligent, very capable, coming from a rich family, etc. And I think at the beginning their relationship was fine, you know.
I'd say more than fine. It seemed to be really good.
Yes, but I think there are some aspects of the beginning when we set her up. It shows that she has this tendency to stray off from her current life because she's a writer, right? So she always tries to control the situations around her. And I guess it comes from the background of her being controlled by her parents.
I think that's the thing as well, that she's always been viewed because her parents, was it a mum or a dad? I can't remember, it was both.
More of her mum, I think.
Writing like her literally, because early on they discuss it where she's telling Ben Affleck about like, write all these stories where I do one thing, but amazing Amy always does more and does better. And I think that affected her in a way. It's like, well, let's see how my life can go. And she like tries to manipulate her way through her life with everything and trying to like get her own vision. Because the thing when she was with Ben Affleck was like, what was his name? Dunne. That was his last name. Nick Dunne.
Yeah.
I don't know why I forget Nick. But like their relationship seemed really good for the most part. And it seemed like her longest relationship that we were aware of. But it was like at the point where she felt like, I don't know, because seemed like the manipulation was like even before, like in New York, when they lived together in New York and then they moved into his hometown. that's when I feel like it started with the manipulation, which is crazy to think about. It's like literally should have just got a divorce, right?
Yeah.
But no, in her head, it needed to be this like elaborate thing, right? It couldn't just be like, we're not in love with each other, let's move on. It's like, no, he did all this stuff to me. I've like been putting down, you know, all this stuff. I'm trying to be like making things better for him, but it's all about him. He's doing all these things because he wants to. And it's like, I was like, because at the start of the movie, it does come from her viewpoint, it does seem like, right? We all kind of like, oh, he is a bit of an asshole. He's just doing things he wants. Like all the decisions she has made has been for him. But then when we like go along with the story and like we're with Nick a bit and he's like figuring out what the hell's actually going on and how many other men she's like manipulated.
Yeah.
And you're like, oh shit, what the hell is all this?
And it turns out she's very similar to her mother then.
Yeah, but like in a completely different way.
Yeah. And I guess, you know, like she takes the term of like taking control of your life to a whole new different level.
Yeah, completely different level.
Yes. Are there any scenes, do you think, that kind of demonstrates the femme fatale traits in
I feel like nearly the whole movie is for her. Like the diary, when they're like at the start of the movie, she's like writing in a diary everything that happens. And it's crazy because we're like looking at it from her point of view early on. We're like, oh, this seems like, early on it seems good and happy. But then when it like gets to like when they move, he hasn't got a job. He's lazing around, not helping. He's smooching off her essentially. Then when they move back to town, like, oh, you feel bad for her. And I feel like the diary does a good job of that because then when the police look at it, it's like, oh, look at all these things your wives have written about you. And he's like, oh, I don't know. And he comes off like really piggish, like, oh, I didn't really pay attention to my wife.
Yeah.
And I feel like that's a great, and she's not even in the like scene. I feel like she does great voiceover and great like putting emotions into it. But the book itself, just like the image of that, manipulated the whole situation great as well. Because that's what I mean. I feel like nearly every situation she's in, she's manipulating it to her own benefit.
Yeah. And I think one of the scenes that sticks out to me is when she was with Desi Collins with Neil Patrick Harris. So she was in this massive house and she learned that there are cameras all around. So in order for her to create a story, she, at first like when he left for work, right, she bit his lips, get his clothes all scruffled, and she's like, oh, this is how the kids wear them. And he would go out and he's like, oh, you know, this woman is like
obsessed with me
and things like that. When he left, she kind of get the wine and to pretend it to be blood and get like bandages around her wrist. And she would pretend to be screaming out of the bedroom. So she was like trying to escape, and she's like, oh, this man has captured me here for a long time. She's and he has been like me and things like that.
Yeah.
And I was like, wow, this demonstrates like a femme fatale trait like crazy, because she manipulates all the things around her to create a story, and it's very frightening to see. Yeah,
it is insane. That stuff is just like, oh my god. Like the length she went to is insane, because Nick talks to both of the past like boyfriends and figures out what she did, because one of the other boyfriends, like similar thing, she got him to like into a point where they thought he raped it.
Yeah.
And then it's just like, oh my god, she's like that vindictive essentially, to be like just f***ed up his life so much, then it's like, and then she just moves on, because that's what she does try to do with Nick as well, like literally tries to make him a murderer.
Yeah.
And it's insane, because it's funny, even like another good scene is like when he does the interview, right, to try to get his story straight, and she's watching it and she's like falling in love with him again, because he's like telling all these things to get people off his back, because they're like, oh, we think you killed her, look at all this shit, you got your secret girlfriend, you know, you're not paying any attention to her, you don't know any of her friends, and it's like, oh, hey, this is actually how I really feel. I've done some bad things, but I didn't bloody kill her. And he's like saying all this stuff and how he feels, and she's like falling in for it again. She's like, oh, maybe he did learn. And I love that Neil Patrick Harris is like sitting next to her and like, oh, come on, I thought you're like obsessed with me.
Yeah. What do you think about Neil Patrick Harris playing this role?
I thought he was good. Like, he's just like, because there isn't like much there really. He's just meant to be kind of like a reserved kind of rich man that's kind of like obsessed with her, but like you can tell that he's like, oh, a bit taken back.
Yeah.
But then when he gets what he wants, it's funny. It's like, oh, it's all worked out. Well,
no, not really.
Not really.
I really couldn't see him outside of the TV character that he played, the Barney Stinson.
Expect him to say legendary or something?
Yeah, it's like, legend, wait for it, dairy.
Legend, wait for it. And I hope you're not lactose intolerant, because the second half of that word is dairy.
But I think that he played a pretty good character in this, but I don't think Neil Patrick Harris was needed in this scene. I think someone else could have been a much better fit for the character.
I think it was fine. I think he did a good job because it's not a main character. He's only in it a few times, right?
Yeah.
And even that end scene when she like slits his throat, that was brutal as
brutal.
hell.
It was brutal. Yeah. But out of all those scenes, another scene that I think kind of demonstrates the Femme Fatale characters was when she kind of ran away. And then, we saw the calendar where she marked up all the events that are supposed to happen.
Yeah.
And I was like, wow, so she had this whole thing planned in her head.
Well, she had a checklist as well. I remember when she was in the car the first time, you see like a checklist of things that are meant to happen and how it's meant to roll out. And it's like, God damn.
And she was eating fast food at the time. She was explaining how she changed from him. And during that time, she was kind of giving us the information about the diary. At the beginning of the diary, she was like, all these are truth.
Yeah, exactly.
When you get to the second half, you can start to be creative.
Because that's the thing, right? You start off with the truth and make it believable. And then it works out because Nick is literally not in her life at like when she's like writing all this stuff that's happening because she's not paying any attention to her. So she kind of makes up all this stuff. And he already looks like the arsehole. So it's like, oh, he hit her. And it's like, no, I just pushed her or something. And it's like, well, we think you murdered her, so it just doesn't add up. And then she's like scared. Like the last one was like, I'm going to go buy a gun because I'm scared. And he's like, I don't know why she would buy a gun. It's even more like not aware of the situation. But yeah, because there's so many, I feel like even better than just like, I feel like that whole movie is her just manipulating everything. There's very rarely a scene, I think only when she's she's staying at like the campsite and she gets robbed by those dudes. That's like the only honest thing from her really, because that's the only time she's not in control, when these kind of like, hillbilly kind of people are just like, we saw you with a lot of money, we're just robbing you. We don't care who you are, we're taking your money.
Yeah. And I think in the grand scheme of things, it was not the worst thing that could have happened to her because like she could have been hurt or something, or like when they were watching the news and I was like, oh, how come the news doesn't show her face? Because like whenever they advertise something about a story, they were like, oh, look at this beautiful woman, she's smart, and now she's missing because her husband has done something wrong.
Yeah.
But they didn't show the photo during the scene where they were watching TV, because I was thinking, oh, if they show this picture on TV,
they might get it.
They might be like, oh, she looks awfully like you, and then they
even though she says it later that she's like, oh, I don't care why you're on the run, we're just taking your money. I will say I do like a scene when they are watching and sitting TV, and the woman's like, oh, she probably deserved all the stuff she got. And she's like, what? And she like gets her drink and like spits it.
Yeah.
Like, oh my God.
That was so petty.
Yeah, that's what I mean. Because that like paints another picture of her. She's like, oh, she's really petty. She wants to be, have the last laugh essentially, right?
Are there any other scenes that you want to bring up?
Even like I say, like the end when she like comes back after she kills Neil Patrick Harris. Like covers herself.
What kind of name is that?
Yeah, covers herself in like the blood.
Yes.
And like literally walks back to the house. And it's like, Nick's like, oh shit. And he knows, because what he said, what's he say, you bitch or something? When they hug?
You fucking bitch.
Because he knows that she's like, oh, she's going to manipulate the whole damn situation again. And then like in even another great scene when they're in the hospital and they're like talking about it. And the policewoman, who's been like following the whole story, is like, well, this doesn't add up. Well, this doesn't add up. Well, this doesn't add up, because the stories now, she's had to make this whole other story, even though she set out this whole thing, and it kind of contradicts each other. And then even Nick's kind of like, well, that's all right now. Like he's kind of like, oh, well, it's done.
Yeah.
But it's crazy that like...
I like that dialogue. Like when Nick was talking to the detective, it was like, how could she get a box cutter when he tied her up the whole time?
Yeah.
And the detective was like, aren't you just glad that your wife's home?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, and yes, you're right. I like that scene as well, because when the female detective asked her the questions, and she was like, "Oh, now I'm feeling kind of a bit of dizzy. I'm fading away." And then she looks over to Nick's outside the door, and she kind of pretends to smile at him.
Yeah.
Which I think was like creepy as hell.
Yeah, I know.
Another scene right after that, when she came home, and Nick kind of confronted her straight away. It's like, tell me the truth, and she was like, get in the shower, because you might be wearing a wire.
Yeah, wire. Oh, yeah. Take all your clothes off because you'll be wearing a wire.
I was like, what?
Yeah, I know. Like, that's the level they're at.
I guess another scene that I want to bring up is after all of that, and they had the interview with that
the horrible bloody
journalist.
journalist.
Yeah.
It's like, you said I literally had sex with my sister. I'm like, I just suggested it.
It's ice-breaking.
Yeah.
And then she gave her a robot dog or something. But yes, during that interview, they kind of held hands. And I think during that time, she kind of got what she wanted. Like, she got a husband that kind of understands her situation and willing to do different things for her. Yeah, so at the end of the movie, a lot of the fans... a lot of the viewers think that this is one of the rare movies that the villain won at the end.
Yeah, definitely.
She won everything.
Because she had the final manipulation of Nick in the end where she gets pregnant. And he didn't have sex with her. She had his semen and impregnated herself just to be the final hook or the nail in the coffin, however you want to put it for Nick.
Yeah.
Because it's like, you feel a little bit bad for Nick, but he's not like a good guy either. But I felt bad for his sister. She's just stuck now.
Yes.
He's stuck now, and he's like, I'm not bailing on her now.
And Tyler Perry's character was a bit fun in this movie as well.
I love that guy, yeah.
Yeah. But at the end, so besides the baby, besides the fact that, her husband will not leave her, she got the book deal out of the story.
Exactly.
She got the movie deal out of the story, and they franchised the bar as well. So now they have like money coming in. Yeah, so she literally destroyed everything.
Yeah, well, she destroyed Nick's life, but created her own that she wanted, and back to being successful again.
Yes. Comparing the three femme fatales that we have discussed so far, what are some of the similarities and differences that you can think of?
So I think Amy and Katherine are the most similar, obviously, because they both use manipulation in different ways, where I think Katherine uses her sexuality a lot to manipulate the people around her to kind of like buy in and believe her a bit, to get like close and comforting and like get information out of them that way. Or even just with her money, using her money kind of maybe the same way Amy might have to like manipulate a situation or get information. Because we assume that's how Katherine got her information about the policeman, because she probably paid someone off.
Yes.
Because then that guy ended up dead anyway.
Yeah.
But where she's a lot more of a killer than Amy is, she likes to manipulate a situation to make her come out as either the hero or the victim.
The victim, yeah.
So she can control the narrative. Where Katherine isn't. She just either uses it for her own success in her books or like can pass it off to someone else. Because the whole start of the movie is like, oh, she couldn't have done this. She wouldn't have wrote the book and then killed him.
Yes.
And it's just like, yeah, that makes sense. And it's like, no, she literally did it.
And I think their motivations might be a bit different as well. For Katherine, she wanted to hide the fact that she is a murderer.
Yeah.
But for Amy's situation, she wanted to control the situation around her and make it like she's the victim, and she wants to make her life better.
She wants the life she can create, right?
Correct.
That's what she was looking for.
Yeah. In terms of the methods, I would say that Katherine's character relies more on her sexuality.
Yeah, exactly.
In terms of Amy, she has things more planned out, and it doesn't need to involve her sexuality,
but not as much as Katherine.
Yes.
And she isn't doing these things to kill people. She only does that in the end for her story to make sense, right? She doesn't just do it. Her end goal isn't, killing. Her end goal is the life she wants, which was eventually to be with Nick, which I found insane.
So the motivations, their methods are a bit different. Another key difference that I noticed is where Amy might come across more planned out. So she has all the plans, all the schedules, all the events kind of schedule up. But I think for Katherine, she has the information in her head, but she doesn't plan it out as carefully as Amy. She would use the information at the right time, of course.
A bit more spontaneous.
Yeah,
I think more in the flow of things, and she kind of plays it as she feels.
Yeah, I think so. But then we have Beatrix Kiddo, who doesn't do any of this, and her motivation is completely different.
But you could say her and Amy are the same in the way they plan things out, right? They both have a plan. Maybe Beatrix Kiddo isn't super complicated, but it's still a plan that she sets out to, like going to get the katana, who to kill first, who to go for first, and who to go for last.
You're talking about like the literally 4-item checklist.
Yeah, the list, right? But that's what I mean. They both had a list, right?
Yes.
It counts.
Yes.
But that's what I mean. Like, even though Beatrix and Katherine don't kill, they both kill, but with different reasons in mind. Like Catherine's was not vengeance. It was just kind of her own want. Where for Beatrix, she feel like it was necessary for her vengeance to get back at what was taken for her. Like you said, she thinks she lost her child and she almost died. So she's like, oh, I feel vengeful to come back and kill all these people that did it to me. But I think
like the motivation for Beatrix was more about her lost kid.
Yeah, exactly.
But then
then herself, right?
Yeah, then herself. But then at the end scene, I think that's what Bill was trying to do. Like he was trying to remove that motivation for her, and then he was convincing her that all the killing that you have done makes you feel good. You are a natural
that's
born
what
killer.
I mean. That's what he was trying to convince her of, right?
Yeah.
But the thing is, that's not what she wanted. That was the thing, right? We know that from like the start of Volume 2, right? When she's like begging Bill to be like, just let me have a normal life, right? Let me move on from this. But he didn't. Well, that's the thing. Bill didn't give it a chance. So she gave him the same mercy Bill gave to her. But where like, I feel like in the other two movies that no mercy is given from Katherine or Amy. They're just very much like out for themselves, not too worried about it. Where you can see a little bit of like from Beatrix, like a bit of empathy, but I think she's just so driven. Because like even the first kill, right, with Cottonmouth, how it's just like she has a child. The same reason she got mercy, but she's like, it's like the biggest, I'm so driven to like do this. Because like you said, she tells her kids like, hey, if you feel like vengeance, come for me. Yeah. Like I know what I've done. Yeah. I'm going to live with it.
Wow, yeah.
Compared to say the other two where they're just like, they've manipulated the situation so well that like, it ain't coming back to me.
I won.
Yeah, exactly.
I got everything I wanted.
Yeah, exactly.
Awesome. Anything else you want to add before we wrap up the episode?
No, I would say I'd enjoyed this more than I thought. I was like, because I felt like we did a good job, like two kind of manipulators and then like a real killer.
Yeah, but I'm pretty sure they were all killers in their own ways, right?
They're all killers in their own way, but they're all different and all had the similarities. So I thought, it was kind of a good look at it.
Okay, cool. So we have reached the end of the episode. These are some of the most popular Femme Fatale on the silver screen. Let us know who's your favorite. And if you enjoyed this episode, give us a thumbs up, hit the subscribe button, click on the bell to get the notification for the latest episode. And thank you so much for watching. I'm Darren.
And I'm Tim.
And this has been Movie Beings.